Okay, it is just about that time, so I'll go ahead and get us going. Welcome, everyone, to Legal and Financial Basics. This is a community dementia education program of Alzheimer's San Diego. I'm going to go ahead and turn the remote over to our presenter. Very pleased today to welcome Kimberly McGhee of the law firm of Black and McGhee, one of a very few certified elder law attorneys that we have here in San Diego County. Really a wealth of knowledge and experience, but I think more importantly than anything else, a lot of compassion and empathy for the needs of our families. Really one of the most knowledgeable people I know on all of these subjects. Very pleased to turn things over. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate those very kind words. And I want to thank everybody for coming out today from your living room or bedroom or wherever you may be. I want to say hi to a few people that I see out there that I do know, either clients or friends. So thanks for coming. This is hard for me. What you're going through is much harder, but I'm going to tell you as the presenter, if you've seen me teach, some of you have, because I know you're on the list. And I like to walk. So bear with me with the hands. I'm going to try my best to keep them out of the screen. I'm going to do my best to try to talk without having to walk around. So I appreciate you being here and putting up with the location we're in. So I'm going to start by discussing the advanced care planning. So I'm going to learn how to use this. Advanced care planning, the reason why we're here, right? We are going, I've been it, I've lived it, I understand. We're all in a very difficult spot. COVID has made what we were going through before even harder. What you are dealing with is very unique to you, but you're not alone. So I want you to know that. So what you're doing today is a good thing, because getting knowledge and becoming more knowledgeable is going to give you some power. It's going to give you some control. And you're going through a disease where you feel completely powerless. You're powerless to help yourself. You're powerless to help your loved one. So part of what I like to do with the legal planning is explain why each step of the legal process is going to give you more control and power over your situation. Because I know how you're feeling and I know how powerless you are feeling. But let's give that to you. And part of that is with the advanced care planning. And whether you're the individual who has a diagnosis, or it's your loved one who has the diagnosis, or you support those with diagnoses, trying to explain the importance of making a plan. This applies to those who still can make a plan. This applies to those who can still communicate with their loved one to make a plan. And also to those who may have loved ones who have hit the stage of their cognitive decline where they can't participate in the decision-making process anymore. And if that's the case, how do we make decisions for them? Because somebody's going to have to make the decisions. So the planning purpose is making decisions about the care you would want to receive if you become unable to speak for yourself. The next step is ensuring those happen. It's great to have a plan, but what if nobody knows about it? Or if you put the wrong person in? And then making sure we discuss every part of it. This is not the time to put your head in the sand. We cannot be ostriches when it comes to long-term care, especially when it comes to cognitive decline. It's not going to get better. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to change these. Here we go. So advanced care planning is about planning for the what ifs that may occur, right? The what ifs. I make a joke, I am an easy jinx. So I always feel like if you make a plan, then you're kind of jinxing yourself in the reverse way, so you don't have to have the worst crisis. So why do we do it? I'm going to show I usually put my hands out wide, but the value of planning ahead is when you plan ahead, your box is the world. When you don't plan, your box in a crisis is this big. So the point, why it's true is you reduce the need to make critical decisions while in a crisis. Think back on your life. Think back on every moment you've ever had a crisis. Did you make really good decisions? Were you able to think clearly? No. So why would you want to hold and wait for the most difficult decisions to be made in those crises, in that fight or flight moment when your adrenaline is up and you're just not able to think well, you haven't been able to sleep. And your fears are high. That's not the time to be making decisions. Make the decisions when you're not in crisis. That's the value of planning ahead. Making sure your decisions reflect your personal values and preferences, and that the family members that you decide to be part of your plan also reflect those personal values. You know, there's no one size fits all. The stories and plans that we come up with here in my office, I find I'm always amazed. And every time I think, wow, I'm going to do that, or that's a great idea. There really is no right and wrong when it comes to this. Well, there might be a wrong, but there's really no right. You can do what you want. We also want to plan to preserve eligibility for public benefits. Public benefits in California in particular, and the US, were really created to extend quality care. So we want to make sure that we maximize the availability so that we can have quality end of life, not become, not have your loved ones become impoverished. And we also want to avoid probate. Anything with the court, we want to avoid. That's the goal in life. And now with COVID, I can't tell you how important it is to avoid the court. Before, it was just burdensome, time-consuming, and expensive. Now, it can be life-threatening to the extent how hard it is to get emergency hearings. To get in and see a judge right now is so hard. There were 3 months where I did get an order out of the court, but it was such a crisis that a small crisis wasn't enough. So we want to make sure that we plan so that you can stay in control and never have to have the court make any decisions for you. So let's talk about the key concepts. Estate planning. You hear the word, I'm going to explain what it is. It's the administration, protection, and distribution of your assets. Okay, what does that mean? It means creating documentation that defines who you want to make your decisions when you are no longer able. So when you become incapacitated and unable to rationally make decisions for yourself, who is the person that you trust the most to make those decisions in accordance with your wishes? That's really the basics of estate planning. Most people think it as death planning. Yes, that's part of it. But in our world, in my world, in the world you're walking into or are living in right now, deciding who's going to manage your affairs while you're alive, that's important. Estate planning is just not what happens when I die and where do my assets go. It's the decision making while you're alive. It also is the decision making and distribution after you're dead. So one of the things that I was doing this morning is I'm creating a plan for somebody because they have a specific idea is if they need long-term care, what assets should be spent in what way in order for them to have the care they want? Do they want to get a equity line or a reverse mortgage on their house before they dip into their IRA? This person is very detailed and we're creating that plan. What does it look like? Because she really wants certain things to happen. So that's what we're doing. We're creating the plan to administer her estate and protect and distribute the assets. The other next step is the benefits planning. And that is determining what eligibility for public benefits you are. How do we prevent the depletion of your assets? I know not very many of you are veterans, but one of the things that we like to do in advance is some sort of veterans planning. We have to do those about 3 years in advance due to the new rules, but the VA offers some benefits. Medi-Cal is every day, I feel like, is getting better when it comes to long-term care. It used to be limited to skilled nursing facilities. Now they're opening up more to in-home supportive services, meaning in-home care and day programs and other alternatives to keep people out of skilled nursing facilities. How can we get you into a nicer community, a small boarding care that has 6 beds, things like that? How do we do that so that your spouse doesn't become impoverished? How do we do that so you can leave a legacy for, a child that's been caring for you and unable to work? Those kind of things. Special needs planning. What happens if we have a child, a grandchild, somebody who has a developmental disability. What is the plan? How can we help them while helping somebody with cognitive impairment? Oh, capacity. Capacity, the capability or fitness to perform an action or enter into a legal agreement. Okay, that's the legal term. Really, can you comprehend and understand the nature and consequences of your decision making? There is my favorite thing I like to tell people, California, number one, you're presumed to have capacity. Number one, you start from that. That's probate code 810. I like to say it so people feel comfortable. A diagnosis alone is insufficient to deem you to lack capacity. That's the next step. I cannot tell you how many of my clients call and say, my mom has a diagnosis of dementia. She's unable to make decisions. I need to take control. Well, no, that's not the truth. The truth is when your mom or your loved one is unable to make their own decisions, then it's time to step in. Not just because they have a diagnosis. As you know, dementia and other cognitive impairments, they are on a wave. They go up and down. They go on a sliding scale. They do all sorts of movement throughout the day based on water intake, based on other medications we're taking. There's a lot of factors that go in. Regular routine. These are kind of things that it's important that just because you get a diagnosis or just because your loved one's been diagnosed, they don't lose control of making their decisions. It's only when they can't understand the nature and consequences of that specific decision is that when somebody needs to step in. Now, I told you we want to avoid court, right? Well, conservatorships. In the event that you or your loved one loses capacity to make certain decisions, like who do I want to care for me? Who do I want to talk to my doctor? Who do I want to talk to my banker? If that doesn't exist, then we may have to get a conservatorship. We call that in our office the nuclear option. We do, unfortunately, too many of them, but we call them the nuclear option. We try to avoid them at all costs. They are expensive and they are timely, and it is the court getting involved in your business. So it's where you have a court proceeding where an individual, usually a family member, there also are professionals when you've got fighting family members, is appointed to provide care for an adult unable to care for their personal needs. So it's basically a power of attorney that's forced on you. And more than a power of attorney, which we will discuss, it is where your civil liberties are actually taken away. We take away your rights. So you can compare it to a power of attorney, but in a power of attorney, they can't overrule you. Your agent can't overrule you. Your conservatorship will. Your conservator will take away all of your legal rights. So how do we avoid that nuclear option? How do we avoid civil imprisonment, as I like to joke that conservatorship is? Well, you need to have some basic documents. Everybody's heard of a will, last will and testament. Generally, if you own no real property, and we can get creative with your investment property, a will might be all you need. There's a normal last will and testament that people think of where they have my jewelry goes to my daughter Kay, the car goes to my son Tim, and everything else is split 50-50 between my kids. That's a normal will. If you have assets over $166,250 or real property, you're going to have to get involved in a court proceeding. So either a probate or a summary administration, but we won't get into that. The idea is we want to avoid the court. I think I've told you. Keep in mind, I love our judges. I do love our court system. It's just very difficult and we can avoid it. So let's do so. So in general, most people want to have a trust as part of their estate plan. Even if you don't have real property, a trust can still be a good plan. Most of the time, though, you need it for, if you have real property, you have to have a trust. Because what does a trust do? A trust is a document where you define who gets to sign your name when you no longer can, either because you lack capacity or because you're dead. So the idea is, if you have a house, how do you sell or transfer your house? You sign a deed. What can't you do when you're dead? Sign a deed. So that is what you use a trust for. You define who can sign your name. And it's also a good place because we call them manuals. You know, a revocable living trust is more like a manual of how you want your life to go. Do you want to stay in your home forever? If you do, what does it look like? What assets are you going to have? What are you going to utilize to do so? What's the negative consequence of doing that? What do you want to spend? You can create it such that it's your manual for your life as well as for your passing. Your power of attorney. That is the document that there are two different kinds. The power of attorney for asset management, we call it durable because you want it to last after your incapacity. Durable power of attorney for asset management is the document that gives an agent the power to sign your name, the power to call SDG&E, Cox, that kind of thing, who can cancel your paper, who can talk to your IRA company. That person is the person that can handle your financial affairs for you. They step into your shoes. They can never overrule you, but they step into your shoes. We also have the durable power of attorney for healthcare or advanced healthcare directive. Somebody this morning asked me, what about the living will? That's the old living will. It's the document where you nominate who is going to be you for purposes of medical. Who's going to be your advocate, who is going to stomp their feet and say, no, I disagree with you. I don't want my loved one on that medication. I do not want that type of treatment, or I do want this, or I do want that. It is the person that is going to advocate for you. To all of our healthcare professionals, don't get offended when I say this, but in my experience over the past 5 years, I'd say, we've turned more into the business of medicine than the practice of medicine. A lot of time, our healthcare workers are fighting against insurance companies in order to provide proper treatment. That's just from my experience, from my friends, from my advocacy. So you want to pick somebody who is a good advocate. And I seem to have lost the ability to change the screen. Amy? Okay, other important documents. The detailed advanced healthcare directive, that's the living will. Normally it comes inside the power of attorney for healthcare. So we like to combine those two documents because healthcare providers understand. It's the one that defines your healthcare wishes. They can be as generic, like pull the plug or don't pull the plug, or specific. I prefer specific. Have a conversation with your loved one. One of the hardest things your loved one may do is if somebody is in the end stages of dementia or other cognitive impairment and they have no quality of life, not the I forget some things or I'm having trouble with names or I don't even recognize my family, is that they have no quality of life left. Then the physician, if your loved one gets pneumonia or if you get pneumonia, your physician will ask, would you like to treat them? Meaning, if I give them antibiotics, they will get better. If I don't give them antibiotics, they will pass away. That's a really tough question. So that's what your advanced healthcare directive will do. It defines under what circumstances would you want treatment? Do you want the benefits to be considered against the burdens, meaning how many surgeries and how much chronic pain? There's a lot of different things that are going to happen. It's not just a pull the plug or don't pull the plug. So have these conversations. I mean, it's not Thanksgiving dinner conversation, but it's still a conversation that should be had. And if you have it in writing, then when the two kids are fighting over you, then I can take it to court and we can get a court order confirming it. We also need the HIPAA waiver. Back in the olden days, your spouse or your child was in the hospital with you and they would get all their information. They'd call from home and say, how's my dad? How's my husband? They'd give you the information over the phone. They don't do that anymore. So HIPAA has been around for a while, but it's finally being enforced. So you need to have a waiver, something that allows the medical provider to give access to your medical information to a loved one. You can usually do it at the hospital. Don't wait that long. Please get one. It's usually included in your healthcare power of attorney, your advanced healthcare directive. A DNR, a do not resuscitate order. I like to talk about those in conjunction with the PULSE, the Physician's Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment, the pink paper. That is the document that if you are a year away from death, or if you're of a certain age or fragility, that you don't want certain things. Like, it's very unlikely at 93 you're going to want chest compressions. Why? Doctors have said you're probably not going to heal from the breaking of the ribs, those kind of things. Also the physician's order for life-sustaining treatment is an order. And when I say order, I mean, it is a physician's order. So if you have something on there, let's say you have a do not resuscitate, they call the ambulance. The pink paper is laying on your chest or above your bed, or somebody's waving it in the ambulance driver's face, the EMT. They'll watch you die if it says die. But if your advanced healthcare directive just says that, they will treat you. Your advanced healthcare directive is your wishes, not an order. So number one, pick the right person. The reason why it's so important is since it is your wishes, they technically can overrule you if nobody notices. If nobody objects to the fact that your advanced healthcare directive says you do want treatment and they're withholding treatment, that's it. Because nobody really looks at that, so it's important. I need to go to the next slide. Okay, maintaining current documents. Okay. This is one of my favorite appointments, is when people come in and they say, well, I haven't reviewed my documents for 20 years. Very common. One of the most common that come in. But it's important to review them regularly because it cracks me up, because they say, oh my gosh, my kids are, 20 years older. They don't need that. Or all those people we named are dead. All sorts of things, or they have the wrong plan for their estate type. So it's important. What I like to say is your estate planning documents, whether it's your powers of attorney, your will, your trust, that those documents must be reviewed often. And often for most people can just be every 5 years. Then as you get a little older, maybe every 2 or 3 years. But most importantly, they need to be reviewed after any major life event. That is a birth, a death, a major crisis, or a diagnosis of some sort. The reason why, and I like to give the example of my brother. When my father had a health event in 2014, first major one, after my husband, of course, my brother, the doctor, was my healthcare agent. After seeing how he acted in the hospital with my father, the next morning I changed my power of attorney and removed him. I learned that day that he will just do what a physician says. So that was it. If it was up to him, my dad would have lived in a facility for a few months under heavily medicated and probably died, because he did not advocate for my dad. I did not want that. So a life event, I saw how he did not rise to the occasion. He completely failed. I love him to death, but that's just not his role in life. So that's what you want to look at when there's a life event. Has something changed? So you want to look to see, oh gosh, you know what? They didn't handle it very well. A marriage, perfect example. We don't like that new spouse. Maybe we don't want them in control. Maybe they're having children and just don't have time. That's reality. This is a lot of work to be somebody's agent. So you also, not only for your estate planning though, you want to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date. When you started that job, you've got a 401k and you filled out the beneficiary. Well, is it still right? Are your primary beneficiaries still correct? So when you fill out beneficiary designations for your IRAs, your 401ks, your life insurance, your annuities, you'll have a primary. And most of the time people pick their spouses. Doesn't have to, but double check the community property law on that. And I'm not going to get involved in that today. But usually there's a primary or more than one primary. And if that person or persons pass away, then you list contingent. So make sure they're up to date and they're accurate. Do they include any minors? Please don't put minors on these, because then you have to have a guardianship, which is just like a conservatorship, but for minors. So we'll call it nuclear as well, when all you had to do was properly define that. You can talk to the banker or the financial institution about custodial accounts if you don't want to go as extreme as creating a trust for the minors. But just be mindful not to give a minor money. And then please, please, please make sure the people, a responsible person or persons, knows where these documents are. Maybe once a week, if not more than that. I'm a member of a listserv. It's a group, it's an email group of all the probate attorneys and estate planning attorneys here in San Diego. And once a month, once a week, more often than you think, there's always an email saying, so-and-so's estate plan. Does anybody know where it is? Because somebody died and nobody knew where their estate plan was. Because these are not things that get registered places. So you need to make sure somebody knows where it is. Next slide. Amy. So we did the advanced. So are there any questions? I've seen a couple jump up. So.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my own cursor here. Yes, I have a couple of questions for you. First, does a spouse need a HIPAA waiver?
Yes, that is the part that's really hard for people to swallow. They don't believe me at first until they talk to the doctor. Every single person needs the HIPAA waiver. In a crisis, they will talk to the spouse, that generally. And I can say they don't have to, but generally they will. But please get it so they can talk to your spouse and anyone else.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question about probate. What happens to the cash, the assets that are in someone's bank account, if that was their only asset, they had no beneficiaries when they die?
If it's less than $166,250 and it's just cash in the bank, then and they don't have a will, then their intestate succession heirs will be able to go collect it through a small estate affidavit. That means intestate succession would be your closest living relative. So it goes down first, so your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. If you don't have any of those, goes up to your parents. Don't have any of those, goes out to your siblings, that kind of thing. So it's your closest living relative based on California law. And if it's over $166,250, then you have to file a formal probate proceeding, which will be about, and right now with COVID, we're telling people it takes about 1.5 years because it's been taking a long time to get hearings. But you can get access to the account for purposes of paying bills probably within about 4 to 5 months.
Okay. All right. I have a question about physician aid in dying. Is there anything on the horizon in California pertaining to assisted suicide for patients with dementia who have documented their specific wishes prior to substantial cognitive decline?
I don't have an answer right now. I would need to spend more time seeing if anything has been going on recently. But the public policy underlying these physicians assisted suicide was that somebody made a cognizant decision at the time of the diagnosis. And unfortunately, when it comes to cognitive impairment, your life choices could have changed, and it's unlikely it's going to happen, but I'm not saying it isn't. I haven't seen anything new in the few coming up because of the underlying public policy.
Agreed. I'll just add, I've attended a few talks on this topic in recent months, and there is actually only, there are no states where the End of Life Options Act or something like it applies to people with late stage dementia, and there does not appear to be a movement in that direction. It's only one country in the world where that is currently possible, and it's for the reasons that you've described. There are a lot of limits there.
I will say that that's one of the examples I give in your Advanced Healthcare Directive. While it may not be physicians assisted suicide, the options for withholding treatment are the closest we have to suicide. So normally in a situation, somebody has pneumonia or a staph infection or kidney infection, you would just give them antibiotics. Why wouldn't you? They're so prevalent, it's so easy. Withholding that treatment would be a way to end someone's life, but without actually doing it. You would let the disease take them versus treating it.
I'll just add, we'll wrap this up. We'll get to more questions. I'll just add, we do have a resource for a dementia addendum for an advanced directive at the end of the slide deck. We'll share that with you in a bit. Okay, on to the next question. I am the caretaker. If I die first, my husband wants to remain in San Diego, where our youngest daughter is. So where do we put that? Like what document do we use to express that wish? He does not want our older daughter to remove him to go into her care. So what tool would they use for that?
So I would recommend putting that in the power of attorney, both the healthcare and the power of attorney for asset management, because someone's going to have to pay for his care as well. And the advanced healthcare directive, the power of attorney for healthcare, is the person who's going to decide where you live and how you're cared for. So putting it in that document with your defined wishes, that's where I would put it. If you have a trust, I'd also put it in the trust. I'd put it in every single document. So the will only applies when you die, so ignore that. But I would put it in every single one that applies to your life. Because then when there's a fight, that's what the court's going to look to. They're going to look to what were their intentions. And if they're written down somewhere, you're in a much better position.
Okay, great, thank you. Can changes be made on an irrevocable trust?
Wow, yes, you can always get a court order. But it depends. So there is something called decanting now, which allows for us to, just like you would pour out wine, that's where they get the name, decanting. You could change the irrevocable trust. That's a case-specific question that I can't truly answer.
Okay, okay. Good question here. Are all of these documents specific by state? Are we talking about California only, or do they apply across the US?
Most states have their own specific documents. They're California statutory, statutory durable power of attorney, the Arizona statutory, Nevada. They all have their own. They're very similar. There's also something called the Uniform Trust Act, so trusts and powers of attorney generally transfer state lines. There used to be, I want to say all states now have the same will requirements. There was 3 states that required 3 signatures, but for the most part, they do travel across state lines, and most states will accept it. Most financial institutions will accept them. There are some anomalies out there. When you go into states like Louisiana, where it's different type of law, you go in, I know Michigan's got some very interesting trust law. So there's going to be unique situations to everybody. So I recommend having it reviewed by a local attorney for wherever state you go. I also highly recommend that if you do that, though, don't let an attorney talk you into just getting their state. Ask them specifically, why does it not work here? Why does it not work there? When my clients leave from here and move to another state, I give them a referral to a few attorneys who I know are going to be good in that state and not sell them something they don't need. Or I ask that I talk to their attorney that they met with so they can tell me exactly why they need new documents. But like California, a good example, we have a specific requirement in our power of attorney that if we want to fund a trust, that doesn't exist in other states. So every state may have a unique issue. So you just want to run by an attorney.
Great, thank you. That's very clear. Appreciate that. Okay, one last question before we move on, but please, everyone, keep them coming. We will we'll continue to track them, and we'll pause again in a bit here to ask more. But I have a question about California's filial responsibility laws. Can you give a basic overview of it, or provide a link or a resource regarding it? If you can direct me to something, I'll send it out in the chat. I don't know of something. This person asks, I've had a family member fear financial burden and responsibility for a parent's care and not wanting to be named power of attorney, even if they're living in another state. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, this is a very common fear, and I think rightly so, it's an actual fear. It hasn't been enforced. So in California, there is a rule that family members are obligated to care for each other. It's more enforced with spouses. So spouses have that duty. But children, there is a statute out there. We just don't see it enforced. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen. Generally, as a power of attorney, as long as you keep signing things as power of attorney, you're never financially responsible. And the likelihood of a care facility or some other institution holding that, trying to utilize that statute, it's probably not going to work unless you've taken all of their money and run off with it. They're going to say they want it back. But as of right now, I can't say with full certainty whether it's going to be applied, because it exists. But we just don't, in the elder law world, we don't see it apply. We don't see anybody trying to enforce it.
Okay. We'll do a little digging around, see if we can find an online resource for more information about that. Thank you. There are some other questions coming in. I'm going to just hold them for now so that we can keep moving in the program. But again, we will come back to them. And I do want to say, I see that there are questions about working with Kimberly McGhee and what does it cost? And we will absolutely cover that at the end of the program. So I'm not ignoring you. So I will go ahead. Do you want to see if you can click again? Give it 2 clicks and see if it works.
Yeah, I've lost the bottom
Okay.
control panel.
I'm happy to keep clicking for you. So I'm listening. So, okay.
So strategies for financing long-term care. This is, I'm looking at the time to make sure how to do this. This is one of the difficult parts. So next slide. All right, what is long-term care? It's important when we're talking about long-term care, we're talking about custodial care. We're not talking about hospitalization for some sort of crisis. We're talking about services and support and care settings for non-medical issues. This would be activities of daily living, feeding, dressing, toileting, transferring, those kind of things, bathing, right? They're not the normal medical procedures you're discussing. We're not talking about rehab. So it's important that we talk about Medicare versus Medi-Cal. It's important, everybody, I can't tell you how many people, when I say long-term care, say, well, I've got Medicare and then I've got a supplement Aetna, or, you know, even better, TRICARE for Life, things like that. Those are not long-term care policies. They're not going to cover your long-term care. You will get certain type of coverage for rehab. You'll get up to 100 days maybe, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But you're not going to get custodial care. Medicare and supplements don't cover custodial care. There is an exception for covering maintenance if you need skilled level of nursing care, but that is a very fine exception to that. So what is long-term care? There's community-based. You can go ahead. There is community-based, there's residential care, and there's skilled. So what is community-based? Community-based is in-home care, adult day programs, PACE. PACE is a program under Medi-Cal where it's actually wonderful because it kind of pulls in all of your different types of care into one overseer, and you can get all sorts of programs. So in order to have in-home care, costs are the #1 factor. Every year when the minimum wage goes up, we run into cost of care increasing. I want to say it was, I can't even remember when it was, 2017, 2018, we had a change in our law in California, which required care providers, so our in-home, our nannies and our caregivers, to be paid overtime and double time. Meaning if you have a caregiver in your home and they are there for more than 8 hours, you need to pay them time and a half for everything over 8 hours. If they're over anything over 16 hours, double time. That means that if you want the same person providing care in home, you could be looking at $30,000 a month for 24-hour care. Most people obviously can't afford that. So they have 3 caregivers coming in every 8-hour shifts. Again, that you're still looking at $15,000 to $17,000 to $18,000 a day, or a month, sorry, a day. So that's something that if you want in-home care long-term, you need to be mindful of those numbers. It is a terrific option when you need a couple hours a day. If you need, normally they have 4-hour minimums, so keep that in mind. But if we're talking about trying to stay at home longer, or if you're a caregiver and you need to go to work, or you've got children, or you need a break, those kind of things are a great option. Adult day programs, I think, are my favorite option for keeping people at home. #1, they provide the mental stimulation to people who have cognitive impairment to delay the progression. Again, when you have cognitive impairment, what is happening? Your brain is failing. It's a decline in the brain, but you're physically fine. That's a problem because this could go on for a very long time. So you want to try to keep this moving and working and exercising as long as possible. So adult day programs usually provide the stimulation. They're well, I shouldn't say all of them. The ones I've seen, had clients go to and have worked with, have trained. They're trained to increase that mental acuity. They want to keep that moving so that your brain doesn't decline, or at least it slows down such that your body can catch up. So I really like those programs. Plus, you can drop your loved one off for the day. If you're still working, this provides that ability to work. It provides the break, and it actually, everybody needs a break, so it's good. And then the PACE program, again, that is where you can get your medical treatment along with some food and transportation and day programs. It's PACE is dependent on where you live. So there's certain zip codes down in San Diego. And now, I can't remember what it's called. I think I've got it right here. Yep, the Gary and Mary West PACE just opened 9-10 months ago. Up here in San Marcos, and it really covers all of North County, San Diego. So it's wonderful. It's important to check it out. They have more options at those places for free assistance. They will help you with getting documents. They will help you with learning about benefits. They will help, and utilize them. They want it. They are great. They want to help. So residential care, that's what they're called residential care facilities for the elderly. It's RCFEs. That's a licensing type. And that's where, those are board and cares. You may have heard them called six packs. They're the converted homes. They're homes in average neighborhoods that have up to 6 residents residing in them, and usually one to two caregivers, depending on the amount of people in there. Caring for them. So it's really, you get roommates. I make the joke with people, you're just going to get some roommates. I used to joke with my parents because they didn't have anything. They sacrificed everything they had so that their children can get a good education, is what I like to say, but they had nothing. And I used to make a joke with them that we were just going to turn their house into a boarding care when they needed help, when they needed assistance, because they didn't have very much equity in it. But it was a perfect house for a boarding care, single story. So it's a good option. Assisted living, those are more of the apartment-like settings, right? There could be 40 apartments, there could be 150 apartments, but it's the apartments, more dormitory style even. Some of them are or studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom even. And they have a restaurant, maybe 1 or 2, a cafe and a restaurant. And they can provide care come to you, especially if you just need assistance getting in and out of the shower. Maybe that's all you need. A lot of times people don't want to move, and I know that's a big issue with people. I always like to come from it. I don't mind moving. I hate home ownership. I hate the fact that when the faucet breaks, I got to fix it. I hate the costs associated with it. So sometimes the idea of somebody else doing it isn't that bad. So sometimes if you kind of change your perspective on some of this, you can have a quality life. I had a client who was just dead set on not leaving her home, but she was suffering in her decline with delusions and some paranoia. So she would spend her day with her friends at a facility, an assisted living facility close to her home. They would drive her back and forth from her house, but then she would go back to her house, and she was so terrified to live there. She would go straight up to her room, put a chair under the door, and then sit there terrified all night till the next morning when the bus would come take her back to the facility. And I never understood why she wouldn't move. And it was her mindset that I'm never leaving my home. I'm never giving up my independence. But and even her friends joked with her, she had no quality of life. So it's important to kind of remind yourself that even though you told yourself you're never going to do something, is it the right thing for you still? Memory care. Memory care is a type of assisted living that is a secure perimeter facility. It means that either there's a locked door that needs a code, or it means there's a delayed egress, meaning you have to push on the door for 15 seconds while an alarm goes off. The idea is how do we prevent people from leaving? And that is most of the people with cognitive impairment. If you go in and get a physician's report, so in order to move into these facilities, you have to get a doctor's report. And if they diagnose you with your primary medical condition as cognitive impairment, some sort of dementia, then you cannot go anywhere else. I mean, legally you can. You can go to an assisted living facility, but there has to be specific, the way the licensing is, there has to be specific protections in place. So they're going to require you to pay for 24-hour care. Again, if you could do that, you'd stay at home. Or, you know, and that's really the issue. So part of when I talk to people who are starting a decline or they're looking at their loved ones, one of the best things to do is maybe consider moving into an assisted living before the primary diagnosis is dementia, such that you can stay at a lower cost. Because now I'm going to talk about the cost of these things. The boarding cares, they can range. I mean, I know of one of about $1,500, which actually is a pretty good one my client had to go to and really thinks it's pretty good. And I've seen them up to $8,600 a month. So that is the biggest range. They normally are between $3,500 and $5,500 a month. That's the average that I do see. Assisted livings, again, depending on the care needs you have, about $2,500 all the way up to, let's see, what was that? It was like about $9,500. So those are, you know, they can range depending where you are. Keep in mind, location, location, location. The ones on the coast, much more expensive than the ones inland, even though it's the same company. So you might want to compare and contrast. Keep in mind when looking at costs, don't just look at how pretty they are, because sometimes the prettier means they spent more money on the surroundings than they do on the care. So talk to the families, talk to the residents. That's how you know. Eat in the cafe, see if it's good. Memory care, this is usually your most expensive. And I do know of a couple at about $4,500, but most of them are going to range around $6,000 to $9,000 a month. So you're going to need to be prepared for that. Skilled nursing care. This is the convalescent home. This is you get discharged from a hospital to a skilled nursing facility. These are the hospital-like settings. Those are generally not places you want to live forever, because nobody wants to live in a hospital forever. But they are the long-term care where you get skilled nursing. Those can range, well, the average private pay rate in California is, what was it, $9,300, and I had it over here. I haven't memorized it yet, but it's not about $9,300. That's the average private pay rate in California. That does not mean San Diego. So, because it includes other places in San Diego that are more rural. So or in California that are more rural. So you've got to think about it. I know I had a client paying $15,200 a month in a facility. I've also had other ones paying around $8,000. So I would say, think of the higher side. That's what they're going to cost. Skilled nursing is though where Medi-Cal may come in. So if we can switch. So paying for it. Now we just talked about it's expensive. How do we pay for it? The average person is paying for it from their personal savings and their assets. So most people in San Diego pay for it from the equity in their home. So for those of you who have received a reverse mortgage or are thinking about a reverse mortgage, please talk to an elder law attorney about long-term care, because we may need to cut off the loss of equity, because the equity is really what most people need. And when people get to me, it's sometimes too late, right? They pulled out some money and then they realized maybe we should stop, but the interest kept compounding on itself and they've lost a lot of the equity that they really did need desperately. I'm not saying it's not right for anybody. I'm just saying, if you're going to do a reverse mortgage with your largest asset that's probably going to be needed for care, please, please, please make sure you do it with your eyes wide open and a plan. Long-term care insurance. For the clients that come in with long-term care insurance, we usually chat about the weather the whole time. I mean, now we chat about COVID. Actually, nobody comes in my office, so let me just fix that. That's not true. We found a way to take care of people, but there's a lot of parking lot meetings. But the long-term care insurance is the best option for you. However, for the most part right now, it's too cost prohibitive for most people. So unless you got it back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, most people don't have it. Before you terminate it, so if you do have it and they've given you an increase in your cost of your premiums, because they do that regularly, talk to somebody first. Just don't not pay it, okay? Come up with a plan. Remember, planning gives you control and power, because you'll be surprised. The financial tools, and so I was saying, we've got reverse mortgages. That, again, is a good option if it works for you. But please do it with your eyes wide open and in conjunction with an actual planner, not just the reverse mortgage agent. The charitable gift annuities, these are one of my favorite things. So if you have a piece of investment property, that anything that's highly appreciated, this is a tremendous option. And if we want to talk more about it, we can. But it's you can go to your favorite charity and get some free information about it, because they normally will do this. And it's a way for you to avoid paying capital gains, being altruistic and giving to your favorite charity, as well as getting a stream of income to pay for your care. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. So I really recommend everybody looking into it if they have something with highly appreciated assets. Converted life insurance. Do not, under any circumstance, stop paying on your insurance if you have it before you try to convert it. There are companies that will buy even term policies from you while you're alive. And it sounds a little morbid. It actually sounds a lot morbid, and it's a little uncomfortable for people to talk about it. But I had a client get about $30,000 from a term policy that was only worth, I want to say it was a 75 or 175. I can't remember the numbers, but I was astounded how much money she got when there was only a couple years left on it, and they couldn't afford to pay on it anymore because of the care. And that money went to pay for care. It was amazing to me. So I do highly recommend at least exploring it. It may not work for you, but explore it. Medicaid, which in California, we call Medicaid Medi-Cal. There is Medicare, which is your health insurance. And we talked about that. That's the pays for your doctor visits. It's your Part A, so pays for your hospitalization, and may pay for up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility, depending on whether you need it. Because it's a health insurance, Medicare will not just cover it. So if you don't need medical services, they're not going to pay for it, because it's not a custodial payer. It doesn't pay for long-term care. So if you need rehab, it will pay for your rehab. If you need skilled nursing, like intravenous drugs or some sort of high-end wound care, something that requires a skilled level of nursing, then it will cover it. But your doctor has to order it. People get frustrated because they get kicked out of Medicare and skilled nursings early because there's nowhere to go. And that's true, but it means your loved one or you don't need medical services anymore. You need custodial services. So one of the things that we want to do is really check in on it. I was able to keep somebody on their Medicare even though they couldn't do rehab for 96 days because she needed wound care. And the facility didn't know that that was an option to still get Medicare paying for it. So it's important to explore everything. Just don't take people's word for it. The facility didn't do it because they were negligent or they were just being awful. They didn't know that that was an exception. So those are the kind of things why I exist. I shouldn't have to, but I have, these are the reasons why I do what I do. But Medi-Cal, when we talked about the in-home care, there's a Medi-Cal option for that. If you qualify and if you're married, then you can possibly qualify because spousal impoverishment rules apply, and we're going to get there, and I'm going to try to speed up a little so I can get to it. That's going to be able to cover some of it. There might be some in-home, there might be some daycare, there might be some assisted living, and there's usually long-term care in a skilled nursing facility. And then there's also VA benefits. So there are a few of you that are veterans or loved one of a veteran. So if you're not the veteran, but you're the spouse of a veteran, that still counts. So I make the joke, just because you put up with the veteran, they're going to pay you for that. Next slide. So tax deductible expenses. Let's not forget that when we're coming up with a plan for long-term care, how we're going to pay for it, I like to involve the CPA. The reason we involve the CPA is because you can start maximizing tax deductions in getting care. So a lot of people don't want to take the money out of their IRA because they don't want to pay taxes. Well, what if it's going to be offset by the care you're paying for? So now all of a sudden, what would have been a financial burden now makes more sense. So we don't want to start start doing something because we've always been told this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to save this, we're supposed to save that. I don't want you using the equity from your home because you don't want to pay income taxes from your IRA. That is I've seen that a lot. And so that's the mindset we need to get into. Can we save money by paying a little bit more in care? Did you meet the threshold for being able to deduct it? So we get in, it's a team. We get the whole team together. And it's not just care, it's home modifications, it's long-term care insurance premiums, personal care. There's a lot of different options out there. Next slide. Okay, there was a couple of you who wanted to talk about employment, so I'm going to just discuss this real quick. If you're still working, make sure, and you have a diagnosis, please make sure that you consult with the HR in a safe way. You don't want to mess up your job and get fired because of your disease. If you get fired because of your inability to perform and they didn't know that you had an impairment, you don't have any recourse. So you want to really, if you want to, you can always reach out to my office and I can refer you to an employment lawyer who I send for a lot of these things. Because a lot of times benefits, I had a client had no idea. They had a long-term care or long-term disability insurance. If you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's while employed there, that covered him for the rest of his life. It's very unique. Don't get too excited for your own hope because I don't have that. But I was shocked. He was shocked. Everybody was shocked. It was a benefit nobody thought of when you're going and signing up. So there's a lot of options. For family caregivers, think about the Medical Leave Act. Those are, can talk to your HR about it. So disclosing that diagnosis of your dementia is very important early on, and I want you to do it correctly. So I highly recommend talking to somebody, and we'll move on from here. Compassionate allowances. This is something that's very important. So it's an initiative that expedites the process of Social Security disability insurance and SSI. Sometimes these processes can take months, almost a year. But if you talk to your worker about the compassionate allowance, I've actually talked to workers who had never heard of it. It will expedite your application. So I think the next slide has a list. If you have one of these diseases that's on this list, then the compassionate allowance will apply, which means you're going to get ahead of the line and your application is going to be reviewed first. And that's very important because if you are still employed and you've lost that income, you need to get your Social Security disability insurance moving quickly. Next. All right, veterans benefits. So again, there's a few of you have the VA question, so I'm gonna walk you through this. I am a VA accredited attorney. It's very important when you're talking about veterans benefits that there are people out there who are selling annuities and other financial products, and they get you in the door by claiming veterans benefits. It's not a bad thing because if you can get somebody to do something for free, please do so. But just be mindful that if you're getting sold something while you're doing it, the VA, anybody doing VA work cannot get paid. It is against the law. So if you call me and say, I want to apply for a VA for veterans benefits, I cannot charge you for that application. Okay, that's against the law. I can charge you for an appeal. I can charge you to consult to figure out if you can qualify. Those are exceptions. But if somebody is saying, I want get paid for this, be mindful they're not doing something right. But veterans benefits, you've got your health insurance. If you are a veteran, double check, get that free hearing aid. Why would you not? There are certain things you can do. The medical care. San Diego has a very good medical system in the VA, in my opinion. Sometimes I've had clients do better there than with their HMOs. There's service-connected disability income. So if you were injured at any time during your service, not getting shot, but if, when you're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in the military, it means that you are active duty. So if you hurt yourself playing basketball, maybe that knee didn't hurt that bad, but you saw a physician while you were on duty, then you might be entitled to some benefits. So keep that in mind. There's the pension benefits, which is the traditional and the non-service connected. So your pension benefits for traditional are just your service. You work for 20 years, you're entitled to a pension. Your non-service connected, that is what people commonly call aid in attendance. There's another type of aid in attendance, so it's not only that one, but it's what people call that. And that's to help you pay for care. What it actually does is it reimburses you for care that you've already spent. So if you spend more than your income on your care and you served 1 day of active duty during a wartime period and a total of 90 days, then you will be entitled to around $2,300 a month to help pay for care. If you're the surviving spouse, you're at a little over $1,300 a month to pay for care. The death pension is also something you might want to look into. If you are the surviving spouse of a disabled veteran, there is something called DIC, Dependent and Indemnity Compensation, and that is where you can get something for their compensation. The VA Caregiver Support Program, oh my gosh, it is wonderful. They will help provide support to the caregivers. They will help support the patient. It is wonderful. Keep moving. Next. So the Caregiver Support Program. I'm glad I forgot we had this slide. So it offers a lot: adult day health care, home-based primary care, homemaker and home health aid, telehealth, respite. If I haven't said this yet so far. If you don't know what respite is, it's because you need it. Okay, I always make that joke. It will provide for you as the caregiver to get some help, somebody either to come in or to have a day program to go. Skilled home care services. So let's say somebody is discharged from a skilled nursing facility and Medicare is going to give 2 days a week of home care. Maybe you add in the VA Caregiver Support Program, skilled home care, and now you might have 4 days a week at home. That just may make the difference. Home hospice care. You want to take all the benefits available, utilize them together, and you're going to get through this. That's what it's going to take, but you have to be willing to try and to look out. And you've taken the first step by being here. So next. Okay, Medicare. So I went through this a little already, so I'm going to skim through this one because I'm looking at our time. And I think a lot of people have more questions about Medi-Cal. But Medicare, again, health insurance, Part A, Part B, Part C, you can see the screen. It is based on your work or your spouse's work or your parents' work if you're disabled. You've got all your different parts. A is your hospital, and A also covers your skilled nursing. I always like to explain it, but it does not cover custodial care. Next. Medicaid, our Medi-Cal. So just remember, we're California. We do what we want here. And anything I'm going to say for right now does not apply to any other state, just so you know. And if you Google what I say, or if you Google some of the things I'm going to talk about, you're going to think I'm a liar. But it's because California is an island when it comes to our Medi-Cal. It is a needs-based program which is funded by state and federal funds. So we have a lot of laws that we have to comply with for federal rules, but California always finds a way around it. And we provide free or low-cost health coverage for children and adults with limited income and or resources. Now, it pays for medically necessary healthcare services. That is the basic Medi-Cal that people are always thinking about. I am going to switch that the Medi-Cal for long-term care is really what Medi-Cal was created for. It's what Medicaid was created for. It was in the legislative history. It specifically says to end the pauperization of spouses. It's about wealth transfer to generations. We're not talking about, the Vanderbilts we're talking about how do we keep people out of poverty? And that is one of the reasons Medicaid was created. So that's when I go through some of these, you're going to understand why. So it's going to provide protections to that middle class. How do we keep people from falling into that poverty level? And how do we protect the spouses? So next. So eligibility. Those who are eligible for SSI. So if you're on SSI, you already know about this, so I can skip it. If you're not on SSI, you probably aren't eligible. And individuals whose income makes them ineligible for public benefits may also qualify as medically needy. So if your income and resources are within. So we'll talk about that. if we have time, because it doesn't apply to most. But the really important things we're going to talk about are your share of cost, spending down, and estate recovery. So next. So Medi-Cal for long-term care. And if I can see the next slide, I want to make sure I'm not jumping too far ahead. Okay, go back. Thank you, sorry. So Medi-Cal, we're going to talk about the few things that they provide, and then I'm going to talk about how to pay, how to get you there. So in-home supportive services. This is one of my favorite uses for keeping you at home. This is something where your child can get paid, your neighbor can get paid, or somebody that already works for the county can get paid. You can utilize in-home supportive services to pay for a private caregiver to supplement that caregiver. What that pays for, it's going to pay for a minimum wage. That's the value. It pays for minimum wage, whatever it is in the county, and every time it changes, it's going to go up. But that's not what private caregiving costs. So people have utilized this to make up the difference. So how do I pay $25 an hour? Well, if I'm getting $12.50, $13, I'm not sure what it is right now, an hour from the county, maybe I can pay that extra $12 an hour. So we can utilize it. It's not 100%, it's not full-time. It's a maximum of 286 hours, I believe, if you hit a certain level, or 186 for others. And it's a social worker that's going to review this for you. So you don't get to decide how many hours I need. But it includes things, not just bathing, dressing, feeding, and toileting. It includes things like house cleaning, groceries, bill pays, that kind of thing. So it's a great option for staying independent and for keeping some support and keeping you at home longer. Community-based adult services, that can range anything from day programs to food programs to transportation programs. It's important to look at whatever services are in your community. If you can get transportation to a day program, or if your loved one can drop you off at that day program, why would you not do that? It's only going to benefit you and your loved one. Medi-Cal is most commonly known in the skilled nursing facilities. Not all facilities in California and San Diego take Medi-Cal. But if they take Medi-Cal, every bed in that facility is a Medi-Cal facility bed. So for anybody on the call or watching on the recording that is a skilled nursing facility administrator, I'm sorry, but I'm giving you the truth out that when you're told by somebody, we don't have any more Medi-Cal beds, if that facility accepts Medi-Cal, all those beds are Medi-Cal beds. So how that normally works is if your loved one or you or your loved one are discharged from a hospital after a 3-day hospital stay, your Medicare is going to cover a skilled nursing facility. And those can range, most of them don't advertise they take Medi-Cal, but a very large, a substantial number of them do, especially some really high-end ones, even on the coast. They want you there because your Medicare is paying a whole lot of money. And then they'll say, oh, Medicare is not going to cover, give you a notice of non-coverage, but you can switch over to Medi-Cal if they take Medi-Cal. And that's something that you want to do in conjunction with some sort of an attorney, elder law attorney. The assisted living waiver program, this has become one of my favorites, even though there's a long wait list. So we are still in a pilot program for it, but we are very hopeful because the state of California is learning that the assisted living costs are much cheaper than the skilled nursing facilities. We are fighting desperately to have the assisted living waiver program extended and expanded. What it is right now we have 5,700 beds in all of California, but not all counties are working with this pilot program. So there is like a 7 to 11 month wait list. I can tell you recently, due to COVID issues, the wait list has gotten a little shorter from what I've heard in the rumors, because it is based on how many people are in the beds. But what it will do is it gets you out of a skilled nursing and puts you back in the community in an assisted living. Not all facilities accept this. So there is a list and it's constantly changing, and it's on the county's website. The assisted living waiver program, you get assistance through a company where the county pays for help. So you don't even have to pay an attorney for help on that one. Next slide. So Medi-Cal eligibility, exempt property and assets. So this is not exhaustive, but just so you know, your home, your primary residence will always be exempt. If you take anything away from today, just remember one thing. You or your loved one, always, always, always have an intent to return home. The reason why that's so important is if you have an intent to return home, your home is exempt. Even though I know you're not going home, you know you're not going home, the doctor knows you're not going home, Medi-Cal knows you're not going home. But if you have an intent to return home, your home remains exempt. Your household goods and personal effects are exempt. You have one vehicle per household. So if you're married, one vehicle. Your term life insurance, because it doesn't have a cash value. So anything with a cash value is counted as an asset, but something like term life insurance does not. Burial plots and other type of preparation for funerals. IRAs and work-related pensions, so 403Bs. I recently did another one that I had to explain to Medi-Cal. Anything that is pre-tax dollars, as long as you're receiving benefits from it. So now with the new rules, if you're over 72 and a half, you're receiving your required minimum distributions, which means it's exempt. Another thing you need to take away, nobody here has any jewelry. We all have heirlooms. Heirlooms are also exempt. So that is a good thing. Next slide. So spousal protection. So what does that mean? You saw the exhausted list of exemptions. Now, how do we protect the spouse? There is something called the CSRA, the Community Spouse Resource Allowance. And right now it's $128,640. So if somebody needs assistance with Medi-Cal, whether it be in-home supportive services, assisted living waiver, any type of community-based program, skilled nursing, your spouse can keep the residence of any equity right now. There is a proposed, well, it's supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen many, many years ago. When the rules eventually change, it may cap out at $750,000 in equity. Right now, you can have anything. So your $3 million house in Del Mar, it's exempt. And your loved one, your spouse can have $128,640 in the bank. Your IRA can be anything. So I did have a client once who had $2.2 million house in Del Mar, $1.5 million in the IRA, and $80,000 in the bank. And they said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, you're qualified for Medi-Cal. And the wife just, because husband had Alzheimer's, and the wife just couldn't believe it. She said, what are you talking about? I said, those are the rules. I didn't make them up. So that's what the Community Spouse Resource Allowance will allow for you to do, is that to protect your spouse. So it also is going to increase. So every year that number goes up. If COLA, the cost of living, goes up, so if you get a raise in your Social Security, it's usually going to go up too. There's something, now we talk about the income, because once we get you qualified for Medi-Cal on assets, how do we deal with your income? So there's something called the MIMNA, the Minimum Monthly Maintenance Needs Allowance. And that right now is $3,216. Again, that also goes up. And every year almost. And it's the amount of money that Medi-Cal says is the smallest amount of money that you can live with as the spouse in the community. So I don't think we have math on it, but I kind of explain it a little. So let's say husband, you're going to have Alzheimer's. Sorry, I'm going to give it to you. And wife is taking care of him. And husband gets let's try to do easy math for me. I'm a lawyer. I went to law school, so I didn't do math. So let's say husband gets $2,000 a month in income from Social Security. Wife gets $1,000. So total, they have $3,000 in income. Well, the wife, she only gets $1,000. She gets to take as much of husband's money to get her up to that $3,216 mark. So she gets to take all of his money, and there have no share of cost for purposes of Medi-Cal. Share of cost is what Medi-Cal it's like a copay. Consider it your copay. And they calculate your copay based on how much money how much income you have over their threshold. So in this example, there's going to be no share of cost. There's going to be no out of pocket for this. Let's say husband has $4,000 in income and wife has $1,000 in income. Well, now I have to do math. Let's say husband has $4,216 in income and wife has $1,000. Then you're going to be able to shift over $2,216 to the wife to get her to that $3,216 level, and husband will be left with $1,000. Medi-Cal lets everybody keep a personal needs allowance of $35, and that would, so then you'd be paying $965 a month for your share of cost. And so I just saw a question pop up, so I'm going to say it right now because I happen to see it, so don't expect it every time. But your income is your total income. So it's going to be all of the income from your pensions, from your Social Security. So, you know, if your railroad pension of $19, that's going to count, it's going to be included. Your CalPERS is going to be included. Social Security, your IRA, maybe. The income that you get from your required minimum distribution is, most people get it on a monthly, but if you cut off the monthly and do it once a year, that may or may not count against you. I have attorneys up in Northern California that say that their county, they take that, whatever the required minimum distribution is every year, spread it out over the 12 months and count it as income. I haven't had that experience, and I know some other attorneys here in San Diego haven't. So when it comes to the other income, it's your total income. Next. So benefits planning. So the reason why we want to plan for benefits is because we want to look at avoiding spending down. A good way to spend down, which is, let's say I have $150,000 in the bank and I have a little bit of a mortgage left. I can take that money and pay off the mortgage. But we want to protect the assets. So California allows for certain type of gifting that you cannot do anywhere else, so long as you have the power to do it. If you do not have power to gift assets around, it's called stealing, so please don't do it. We want to maximize the benefits. We want to extend them out for as long as possible, and we want to protect the community spouse as well as minimize your share of costs. Next. Okay, good. I am so proud of myself. It's 2:25 and I was at stop now.
Yeah, we don't, unfortunately, we do have a fair number of questions here. I wonder though if I may just hold them for a little bit. Do you have time to stay a little past 2:30? For anyone who has asked one of these kind of personal questions, we will kind of wrap up the webinar, but hang on, and we will address some of these individual questions if that sounds okay. But there are a couple more general questions. Sorry, let me find. Okay. An ex-military spouse still receiving TRICARE medical benefits, eligible for custodial care, long-term care benefits?
I need to know more about X. So if it is a surviving spouse, yes. If it's a divorced spouse, no. Unless the divorce, there's a weird exception if you can prove that it was because the divorce was due to abuse as it related to service. So it's a very unique thing. But if it's a surviving spouse, yes. Divorced spouse, no.
Okay. And would or could my parents' medical benefits be disrupted if they have whole life insurance? They are not the owners, but they are each other's beneficiary.
I'm not sure what that question means about their health insurance. Medical benefits will never be interrupted by your assets.
Okay.
So if we're talking about Medi-Cal, then whole life insurance, they probably wouldn't apply. So
I think that actually was the question. I think I misread that. Yeah.
So Medi-Cal, and when writing, we always, because Medi-Cal is very difficult. So we're working on this. We're going to get through this COVID. So your whole life insurance, whatever the surrender penalty or policy is, there's a cash value, and that cash value counts as an asset. So if you've got a whole life policy where the cash value is $250,000 and the death payment is $400,000, that $250 cash value will count as an asset, so you won't qualify for Medi-Cal. So in situations where we have the ability to, in conjunction with a proper legal counsel, there is possibilities to transfer ownership out of your parents' names. But you have to do that in conjunction with an attorney, because you can really mess up your benefits if you don't do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I have several questions here about sort of what's involved in consultation with you or another attorney. So if we may, I will ask that we sort of get through the resources kind of quickly, and then we'll cover that, wrap things up, and then be happy to take some of those one-on-one questions. That sounds all right?
Yep.
Great. Do you want me to go through this?
Oh, sorry. I had a screen that I couldn't see. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So the next steps, what I want you to do, I want from here. So you've made the right step by taking this class. Number one, first, I want you to take more of them. That's my real next step. But I really want you to take from here to gather your important documents. I want you to look at income, property, investments, savings, insurance policies. It's important to kind of put it all together, get a good look at it. It doesn't need to be pretty on an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, if you're an Excel person, do it. A handwritten ledger, just getting it together. Keeping copies of everything in one place is amazing. Please do that. Again, don't be one of these people that we have to search online to see if anybody did an estate plan. Tell somebody where to find them. You don't have to give copies to people. I'm uncomfortable, I'm a control freak, and I'm very private. I don't want everybody knowing my business. So I tell people where to find it. They don't necessarily need a copy of it. Tell trusted family members where they are. That's the next one, see? Create and update essential planning documents. If I can give you one thing today, get powers of attorney. Please, 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 please. I mean, after you're dead, you're dead. But please get powers of attorney, because those are the documents that your loved one needs. It's not giving away your rights. It's not losing control. It's making sure that you can stay in control and you can save money. You can get them at office supply stores, which I don't necessarily recommend because they're not long-term care and elder law language, but at least it's something. At least somebody can access your bank account. So talk to somebody about it. Discuss the contents of your advanced healthcare directive with someone, please. Don't just say, have someone get called at 4:23 in the morning saying your dad's in the hospital or something like that and not knowing what he wants. And then find out what specific institutions need to have on file. What do they need? What do you need to bring? What do you, if you're constantly going somewhere, how do you handle with what they need? So I'm gonna keep going. Okay, legal and financial planning outside of California. Lawyers are licensed as state specific. I'm licensed in California and Nevada. Legally, I can practice in Nevada, but I don't because I don't keep up on the law as much. If you're going to another state, look at that state. Again, Medi-Cal, things I can do for you here. If you move to Massachusetts afterwards, we're in trouble. So you want to look locally at whatever state you're in. It's real. NALA, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, has a good list of attorneys that handle long-term care and disability issues in every state. So that's a good place to look. Remember, because Medicaid, completely different state to state. They have different thresholds, different values, things like that. The federal government gives us a level from here to here, and your state gets to pick one. And then just making sure when you're moving. We had a client we did a lot of planning for, and they decided to move to Virginia. All of that planning went out the window. Okay, so here are some really good places. Your advanced healthcare directive, physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. Your advanced healthcare directive, hospitals have great ones. California Office of Attorney General has great ones. So my favorite, you won't hear this often out of me, but my favorite one is from Kaiser, to be honest. It has a real, it's like 12, 15 pages and it goes on and it's really good. The physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, that's something you can get on the Coalition for Compassionate Care website. You can also ask your doctor for an appointment and they'll make that appointment. And remember, it's the pink paper. If you can't remember the name, say it's the pink paper. Consumer Tools Kit for Healthcare Advanced Planning, really good one. It's the American Bar Association has a good plan. And then Compassion and Choices, the dementia provisions for advanced healthcare directives, that you want to focus on because you want to plan for the hardest days.
Just want to remind everyone that we will be emailing these slides, so you don't have to furiously write down those very long web addresses. We'll send that to you.
Okay, legal services. So I talked about NALA, and just a warning, now I'm past president of Southern California National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. I get to say that happily. The NELF, National Elder Law Foundation. I am a certified elder law attorney. There are 4 in San Diego County. They are our governing board. So if you want to find somebody in a different state or a different area, or make sure to see if they have that certification, NELF is the governing board for that. The State Bar of California is also a great place because you can check for certified specialists in estate planning, probate, and trusts, which I also am one of those. But you can see on there if they've got that specialization. It doesn't mean we're better lawyers. It just means that we've studied more and taken tests that confirm that we have a certain level of knowledge, just so you know. San Diego County Bar Association is a great resource to find a local attorney near you. I am also a member there. California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. I'm a member of all 5 of all of these. I didn't realize that. Canner is everything. If you want more details about Medi-Cal specific in California, go to Canner's website. It is the only one that is accurate information. They are also personal advocates. So even when I'm having trouble, I will call them up and say, this is the problem. If you're having problems in the nursing home, residential care facility, any type of long-term care issue, Canner is the best. I had a client who was unable to go see their adult disabled child in a skilled nursing facility. Canner advocated to get them in. Regulatory agencies. Make sure when you're hiring or going to a facility, you look at home care services, the Department of Social Services, public health, and the senior care program. So these are skilled nursing, continuing care, residential communities. Those are the buy-in communities where you buy in and you pay a monthly fee and they can't kick you out. Some of them. But you're going to want to look to see what kind of licensing issues if they've had trouble, is it just keeping their paperwork together, or is it physical problems? So you want to really look to see what kind of, it's kind of like comparing your food, like the A, B, C in the window of restaurants. That's kind of what it is. Benefits program. So Medicare. Medicare.gov has everything you'll ever need. Medicare advocacy. I learned how to do Medicare advocacy through MedicareAdvocacy.org. A person got on the phone when I called and helped me. I didn't know how to help a client. They helped me. So you can do some of these things on your own. Social Security Administration, the Compassionate Allowances website, check that one out if it applies to you. Medi-Cal, and then the Caregiver Support Program. So all of the programs we talked about here, you can look online and read about. And there's me.
So we have received several questions about if we came to you for a review of our estate plan or to update documents, what would we be talking about in terms of how hard is it to get an appointment in this current environment? How does it work? And what kind of fees might people expect?
Okay, so in general, I charge for my consultation fees, but I have an exception for Alzheimer's San Diego referrals. So you will get an hour free consultation if you reference San Diego Alzheimer's in your appointment. We're not doing in-person meetings unless there's an exception. I have had some clients that are so hard of hearing that we have made exceptions and done things in the parking lot under tents, and we're getting as creative as we have to. We can do things via Zoom. We can do it just over the phone. If you want me to review your documents, I need you to get them to me somehow. Email, fax, mail, that kind of, so I do have to see them. I don't want to have an appointment with you if I don't have your documents, because we'll talk just in assumptions, and that's not a very good plan. So just a basic review, you're going to get that free if you mention Alzheimer's San Diego, and that's about an hour consult. If you want to retain me, I charge $3.75 an hour for basic consults for hourly, right? So if you have a conservatorship, you're paying the high prices. If you just need estate documents, we do charge flat fee things like $250 for a power of attorney. We also have packages that can range from $2,000 to, depending on what you need. It ranges the board, but we're here. Appointments, we used to be about a month and a half booked out, but because of COVID and we're doing this on the phone a lot, it's faster. But as you can tell, I talk a lot. So usually about a week to get in right now.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I will be brief, but I will ask my colleague Kristen to come online here and tell you a little bit more about one of our programs in particular. But if you are not familiar with us at Alzheimer's San Diego and the range of free support and services that is available to you, please reach out, get in touch with us. We offer social work consultation services, of course, lots of education, support and discussion groups. We have a virtual All's Companions respite program that we're operating now. We do free movement and motion classes online. Everything that you see here is provided virtually, so it's safe, and of course, it is always free. Is Kristen here? There she is. I think you're muted, Kristen.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry folks. I just wanted to take a moment to discuss with you a new support and discussion group that we're offering. We found that there was a need for a specialized group for folks who are caring for and advocating for a family member or a loved one who is currently living in a care facility, any type of care facility, skilled nursing, assisted living, boarding care. This new group is going to be starting 2 days from now on Thursday, and all the details are on the screen for you. If you're interested in enrolling or want to learn more about it, please feel free to reach out to us at 858-492-4400.
Thank you so much. So Kristen is one of our social workers, and she will be one of the facilitators of this group. If you're interested in learning more about that group, of course, you can call, as she indicated. Jean has also sent a link out in the chat that you can click on that, and you can request to have a social worker reach out and get you more information about that group or about any of our other programs and services and supports. So please fill that out if you are in need of more information. Lots of ways to reach us. We're super accessible. As our CEO likes to say, we now have 22 locations to serve you at Alzheimer's San Diego, since we're all working remotely. Our office in Kearney Mesa is currently closed, but we are here to help. So please go to our website, give us a call. You can live chat us from our website or fill out that form. Again, Jean has been sending the link out in the chat. Oops, sorry. See, I do it too. When you exit the webinar, please feel free to stay, because we're going to stay a little longer and answer some one-on-one questions. My thanks to Ms. McGhee for being generous with her time today. But when you do exit the webinar, you will be directed to a link to complete a short survey. We would love your feedback on the program. And you see here the names and dates and times of a couple of our upcoming programs. So I'm with you. Please keep taking more classes. There's always more to learn. We have Coping with Personality and Behavior Changes, which is a really helpful program for care partners. And then I mentioned it during the webinar here today, but on August 11th, we have a class called Home Care, Daycare, and Memory Care, where we really dig in on all these different types of care that were covered here today in more detail, what they cost, how to find a good one, and how to access them. So please feel free to join us for those or any of our upcoming programs.